A lot of talk about the government getting out of GM. Mitt Romney weighed in saying the government should sell. But another big component of that bailout was Ally, which was the financing arm of GM, also back in the news with a possible IPO that may not be going so well, possible sale. The government owns 3/4 of the business. Anthony, what's going on there?
Yeah, it's turning into a little bit of a saga. Ally, as you said, was saved by the government. They plunged $17 billion in there, mostly actually to help sort out its mortgages.
Right, they had this res cap, this other business, which was a complete mess.
The jewel in the crown when GM had to sell it in 2006, and then when the mortgage market went to hell, so did GMAC, as it was called. Now it's Ally. It's mostly now a car lending business, and actually does pretty well. It's picked up Chrysler's financing business after Chrysler and Chrysler Financial got into similar trouble, and it's done pretty well.
So it's a pretty hefty business now. It's getting lost a little bit in the news, but I mean, this is a big business.
Yeah, it's got $190 billion or so of assets. Now a lot of that is mortgage assets, admittedly, so you can strip those out, and it's maybe got sort of 90, 100 billion of auto loans here and there around the world. Now it's probably worth about $25 billion, just based on what its net asset value is, and putting that on a sort of 1.3 times multiple.
Obviously, it sounds like, I mean, res cap put aside, it sounds like a business that's would be appealing to a lot of banks.
Despite the crisis, auto loans performed pretty well, and the securitizations didn't blow up. The loan losses have come down very nicely in the last couple of years.
People, even though they walked away from their mortgages, continue to pay their car bills.
Exactly. Well, they needed their cars to get to work. Their houses they hadn't put much money into, so they just rent them.
So that business held up, and so appealing asset.
Yeah. So they wanted to IPO it, and obviously with the election coming up, the more money that the government can get out of where they had to go in for bailouts, the better. We had, as you said, Romney last week saying that
get out of GM.
The government's GM stake right now, which would of course crystallise a $14 billion loss. Not a great idea. Ally, on the other hand, it looks a pretty good business, but the IPO got a bit whacked. Firstly, by mortgage problems they continued to have last year. Secondly, by the European market problems last year, so they put it off. Now there's rumours they might try and sell it. Great idea. Who could you sell it to? A couple of regional banks. BB&T's looking for something. Regions Bank.
Canadian banks.
Canadian banks. I mean, all of these banks have one thing in common. They have very low loan-to-deposit ratios. So what they need is some good assets to fill up.
So what's the problem? It sounds like a, good, healthy auction.
Unfortunately, at $25 billion, that's pretty high. Think back to what happened just last week. Capital One finally got its deal approved for the Fed.
A deal that didn't look like it was going to have any troubles getting through.
They bought ING Direct's deposit arm. Nothing special in that at all. But because it's big, or bigger than $2 billion, I think the Fed is now saying, the Fed spent, what was it, 9 months looking at it. And they're going to look at every single deal over $2 billion now. Now, that may put some banks
That's because they're worried about the capital rules and
capital rules
there's
and
a lot of
complexity and everything else. And a lot of banks aren't particularly specialist in car lending business. There's a lot of them pulled out. Sovereign stayed in it, but it's only in a very sort of small part of the company of the country. US Bancor's pretty big, although doesn't have as great a loan-to-deposit ratio to buy some.
There's a lot of potential buyers, but a lot of
even
potential
GM
problems.
could. I mean, it's a natural home for GM. But if they buy it, either they've got to issue more stock at a much reduced level, and don't forget the government still owns a big chunk there.
That seems like a mess.
Or they've got to use their cash, but they don't want to use all that cash when they've got other issues to solve, such as their European arm and their pensions issues.
All right, well, we'll leave it there. We'll keep an eye. It's obviously a story that's bubbling along. We'll be back with more Breaking Views tomorrow.